We want to welcome everybody to Rav Ginsburgh's monthly class. And hello to everybody on Facebook and YouTube. So Rav Ginsburgh will be up in a couple of moments. In the meantime, we just want to update you about the project, the music project that's going on. It's ongoing. And we have a very talented musician. His name is Achia Loro. He's been taking the Rav's nigunim, of which there are about 300, 350 by last count, and rendering them on a grand piano and doing a wonderful job with it. If you want to hear these nigunim, especially the last one that came out in honor of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's 116th birthday, you can hear it on our YouTube channel, and it's also available on our Facebook page. The reason I'm looking that way is because I'm waiting for the Rav to come up. He'll probably be up in a couple of minutes. And since I don't want to introduce him, because there's nothing I could possibly say, so I'll just sit here with blank face. Say a mimer, right? I can tell you some good news. I think last time I sat here, I also talked about 2 new books. So there's 2 new books that are coming out. And the first one is on the number 137, which is a very important number in physics and in nature. And there's a pretty big book that's coming out on that. And there's another book on the relationship and the possibility of integrating Torah and science, which is also ready for print. We hope both of these will be available once Rav Ginsburgh travels to the United States right after Shavuos, meaning in about 6 weeks. The plans are not finalized yet, but they're very close to being finalized. If you want to get the Rav to speak in your community, there's still a slight chance that you could do that. So, wishing you a healthy summer. Here's Rav Ginsburgh.
Good afternoon. Good morning in America. After Pesach, there's a custom to wish everyone a gesunde Sommer. Should be a healthy summer and healthy always. To be healthy, we have to be healthy both in body and spirit.
The screen is blocked.
Once more, it's customary today to wish everyone a healthy summer, a gesunde Sommer. And always to be healthy. And to be healthy means both in body and soul and spirit. So we'll begin, before we get to the main topic of today, Amir Hashem, we'll begin with something about coming out of Pesach and how this holiday of Pesach actually gives us the power to be healthy. The simple explanation is that for 7 days, and this year even here in Israel, it was 8 days we ate matzah. And matzah in the Zohar is called Mechla da Asvata. It's like taking its medicine. It's good medicine. It's healing bread. It's also called mechledim himnuso. It's called bread of faith. So when we eat the matzahs, we're both eating, meaning integrating into the consciousness of our souls both faith, and that gives us the power that heals us. So once more, a person can think that this is basically referring to physical healing, which of course we have to have a whole and healthy body. But it also refers to spiritual healing of the soul. And one basic indication of that is a very, strong statement of the Ari HaKadosh, the greatest of the Mekubalim, the Kabbalists, is the Holy Ari, who passed away some 500 years ago, and is buried in Sfat. And he said, he promised, he gave a promise that whoever is careful in keeping the laws of Pesach, not to eat even a bit, a mashu, a little bit of chametz on Pesach, so he is promised, muftach, that he won't sin the entire year to come. Spiritual health or the opposite, but illness is identified with sin versus a merit. If a person is always doing mitzvot and learning Torah and helping other people, the greatest mitzvah, of course, is tzedakah and gemilut chesed, to help other people. So that definitely is an indication that you're healthy in soul. If a person does averot, which is called to sin, transgression, so that means that there's something, some problem, some illness on the spiritual plane of the soul. So if the Arizal promises us, he says that if we'll be 100% careful not to eat even a bit of chametz on Pesach, so for sure we'll be saved from sin the entire year to come. Meaning that we'll be healthy in spirit. So many of the sages, the later sages, meaning in later generations, tried to understand what exactly did the Arizal mean when he made this outstanding promise. So one opinion says that he couldn't have referred to intentional sin, because if the meaning of his statement would have been that if you're 100% careful in keeping Pesach, you won't sin, so that's like negating free choice. During the year there can be many temptations, many pitfalls, that a person approaches some pitfall, some temptation, and he falls because he doesn't use his free choice to overcome. So according to this particular reading of the Arizal, he couldn't have been referring to intentional sin, because intentional sin depends upon choice, and there's no patent that if you do such and such, even if you do the greatest thing, we're going to release you from temptation and from a free choice. That couldn't be the case. So what does it mean? What is the interpretation? It means that you will be saved from unintentional sin. There's a verse that reads, "Lo yuneh l'tzadik kol avin," that a tzaddik, who's a good person, he won't fall unintentionally. So according to this understanding of the words of the Arizal, the promise of the Arizal, if we keep Pesach well and don't eat chametz, then we'll be protected. It's like once more, a recipe for protection the entire year, that we will not fall unintentionally. But as far as intentional, that depends on one's consciousness, one's mind, one's free choice. This particular opinion goes on to ask a question that we read in the Gemara, that one of the great sages, Rabbi Yishmael, once he committed on Shabbos an unintentional sin, that he tilted the candle that he was reading by, and he was aver, in other words, he transgressed the burning on Shabbos. He said, when the temple will be built, he'll bring a korban, he'll bring a sacrifice to the temple. So the question is asked, he for sure, Rabbi Yishmael for sure kept Pesach 100%. He was 100% careful. And the Arizal says that if you keep Pesach 100%, you will be protected from unintentional sin, according to this reading. So how could it possibly be that he fell and committed a sin unintentionally? So the explanation of much more of this particular opinion is that it must have been the Shabbos in Pesach itself that it happened. Because the promise of the Arizal is from the end of Pesach, the end of this Pesach, to the beginning of next Pesach. But the week of Pesach itself, that there's always one Shabbos. Like this year, the Shabbos was the first day. Most years, the Shabbos is in the middle of Pesach. Shabbat Chol HaMoed it's called. But this year's Pesach, the Shabbos was the first day. So there's always at least one Shabbos in Pesach. So it must have been that that unintentional sin was on that particular Shabbos. So this is all, according to that understanding, that he must have been referring to unintentional sin because a person has free choice, and no matter how good you are, your free choice is not taken away from you. Now, according to this opinion, the Arizal lived 1,200, 300 years after Rabbi Yishmael. So it's clear that the sage of this opinion takes for granted that if the Arizal said something in his time, it must be an eternal truth, meaning that it must apply to the past, not just from now and the future. He's not creating, innovating a new state of reality. He's just revealing some concealed truth, a reality that was always there, because the Torah is eternal, it's true. Every statement that a sage says is a statement of Torah. So it must always have applied. Because if I would say that this statement, this promise of the Arizal is only from now on, in the future, then there would be no question whatsoever about Rabbi Yishmael. Because Rabbi Yishmael was over 1,000 years before. So no matter how well he kept Pesach, that doesn't mean that he's promised by the Arizal that he won't sin unintentionally the whole year. So meaning, according to this opinion, there are two premises. One premise is that the concept of sin is unintentional. And the other premise is that if the Arizal says something, it's also retroactive. It's always applied, not just from now on. But these premises are maybe we can understand the whole scenario here in a different light altogether. So in order to continue to contemplate upon this, I have to explain that there are two basic concepts in Chassidut. That sometimes it's explained that these two concepts are the two pillars of the deep philosophy of Chassidut, from the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe and all of the great sages of the Chassidut. I'll say the terms in Hebrew. The first concept is called He'elem V'Gilui. He'elem V'Gilui is translated concealment and revelation, meaning that something was initially concealed and now it becomes revealed, but nothing new has been created. It's like something, there was a treasure in some case that was buried in the ground. And now somebody comes and digs it up and opens the Argaza case, and you see the treasure is revealed, but the treasure was not created anew. It was always there. It just was concealed. Meaning that what you did is you simply did something to reveal a concealed reality, but you did not initiate or create a new reality at all. That's concept number one. That's called He'elem V'Gilui, concealment and revealment. But the other pillar of understanding phenomena, according to Chassidic philosophy, there are two basic types of phenomena. One is a phenomenon of He'elem V'Gilui, of concealment and revealment, and the other is a phenomenon of etzem v'hitpashtut, is the term in Hebrew, which means an essence and some new expression or extension of that essence, which actually means that an essence creates new reality, something really new. Because we are probably more familiar with terminology like the 10 Sfirot and the 4 letters of Hashem's name in contemplating Kabbalah and Chassidut. These terms may be new for us, but in order to put them into context, so we'll explain that in intelligence in general, which is the first 2 letters of Hashem's name, Yud and the Hey, which in the Sfirot and the higher channels of creation, which are called the Sfirot, correspond to the Sfirah of wisdom and understanding. So, pure intellectual phenomena are always He'elem and Gilui. It's always revealing, because it's revealed, that's the concept of truth. Truth doesn't change. It always was. And it always will be just a question if you know about it or you don't know about it. If it's revealed to you or it's not revealed to you. So since truth is the function of the mind, it means that the mind operates on this phenomenological axis, which is called He'elem V'Gilui. Whereas the heart and the words and the behavior of man, which are the 2 last letters of Hashem's name, Vav K, and correspond to the Vav of the 6 emotional or emotive Sfirot, and the last Hey is Malchut, which has to do with leadership, with speech and leadership. So those operate phenomenologically, we'll call it on the axis of etzem v'hitpashtut, that new things are being projected into reality, that they weren't there before. Right, so these are as I said before, I'll repeat it again, in certain Chassidic texts it says that to understand properly these two concepts is the heart of Chassidut. The opinion that we first stated, that if the Arizal said such a statement, that if I am careful to not eat chametz on Pesach the entire week, so I'm promised, meaning I'm ensured that I won't sin the whole year. So if that is taken to be a Torah truth, which means just an intellectual understanding of truth, so once more, it must be retroactive, because truth doesn't suddenly come into existence. If he said a true statement, whatever, even, we know a little bit of logic. There are true statements and false statements. So that very basis of logic, that something is either true or false, that's obviously operating on this axis that we call He'elem v'Gilui, not that's in B'id Pashtut. So once more, if the Arizal, he's a Torah scholar and sage, and he said something, so it must be true, means that it must always have been true. It's not just now that it comes into existence, this reality. So therefore, it's retroactive, and at the same time, it must be something that doesn't depend or doesn't interfere with free choice. It's something by itself. So what does it apply to if it doesn't interfere with free choice? It can only apply to unintentional sin. Like in that story of Rabbi Ishmael, that unintentionally he tilted the candle on Shabbos. But now we'll try to understand the whole question. We're taking a statement of Arizal and trying to analyze it according to these two pillars of understanding in Chassidic thought. If we take the statement not as I would just read it simply, that I read a statement that 500 years ago, the Arizal, that I believe that for sure whatever he says is so. And he says that if I keep Pesach 100%, I'll be saved from sin. It means that I'll be healthy, as we said before. I'll be spiritually healthy the whole year. So, the way that I understand that is that he created something new. And it wasn't the case before he made the statement. It simply wasn't the case. So if it wasn't the case before he made the statement, that obviously does away with the whole question of Rabbi Ishmael, how he committed an unintentional sin, even though for sure he kept Pesach well. And also, who says, why does it have to be that the Arizal was referring simply to unintentional sin? When I read that statement, that you will be saved from sin the whole year, he doesn't say unintentional sin. He says sin. So what was the question? The question was, how he can't obviously be denying or negating free will. If I say that he's, what does it mean, creating something? There's a new input of new energy into the universe, into the world. This great sage has the power to create new energies. We always speak of the law of conservation of matter and energy. But it says actually that every mitzvah that we perform is bringing new energy into reality, into the universe. Because we don't believe, we're not confined by conservation of energy and matter. because we have a Torah and mitzvot. So I would prefer to understand that the Arizal here is creating something new in his statement. What about intentional and unintentional sin? For sure he's not negating free choice, but what? If, as we said before, a person throughout the year, today, tomorrow, next month, maybe some temptation will come along to me, and I'll be faced with a problem. Either I'm going to stand this trial, because every sin is standing. If you do not commit the sin, you're standing the trial, just like Joseph. Or I won't stand the trial. So if we already mention now Joseph, how did he stand the trial? It wasn't an unintentional, it's all intentional. It was an Eshet Potiphar, the wife Potiphar was seducing him. And that can happen to anyone. He's being seduced right now. So how did he stand the trial? So Chazal says that he stood the trial because the countenance of his father, of Jacob, appeared to him. And under the inspiration and the awe of the countenance of his father, that gave him the power to stand the trial. Which means that it empowered, like a shot in the arm of strength to stand the trial. So if you get a shot in your arm of strength to stand the trial, is that intentional? That's intentional. It's just reinforcing your power to be good and not to fall into sin, into evil. So I can also definitely say, not as the opinion that we quoted before, that when the Arizal says that if we keep a Passover 100%, we'll be saved from sin, not only is he now creating a new reality, which is from now on and doesn't apply to the past at all, but he's also referring to all forms of sin, because I'm giving you, or this statement, or you yourself are giving to yourself, through my innovation, the power to overcome temptation and to be good consciously. Means it's empowering one's free choice itself. Now, in this itself, there are two possibilities of how did the Arizal, according to this reading or this understanding, how did the Arizal come, or was able to project? We said before, Etzem B'Yitz Pashut means projecting something new. To project something new out of an essence, which is not simply to reveal the presence of the essence, but to a new projection from within the essence. So there are also two ways to understand it. It could be that in the time of the Arizal, and even now, even more so, Minhag Yisrael, the custom of Israel, is to be much more machmir, which means much more severe in the way that we keep Pesach, which was not the case in the past. Beginning from about 900, 800 years ago, Jews not only did not eat chametz on Pesach, but even kitniot, which is different forms of grains. Most or not all, but most of us have the custom not to eat kitniot. Then, a few hundred years later, it's actually in the generation of the Magidiv message, just a few hundred years ago, there became a custom which was kept by Chassidim, not to eat shui, not to let the matzah become wet. Because if it becomes wet, anywhere there's a chash, it could possibly be that there's some flour or some little grain of wheat that wasn't baked properly, and it could become chametz. Now these two chumras is being more severe than the letter of the law demands. The letter of the law does not demand these two very severe chumrot, it's called, of Pesach. One is called kitniot and the other is called shruya. So since these began to become common territory, inheritance of the Jewish people around the time of the Arizal, so we could say that the reason that he was able to make the statement that if we keep Pesach 100% will be said because now Jews are on themselves taking on a custom which is not required by the laws. It's beyond the letter of the law. So meaning that the merit to be saved from the sin is actually our merit. That we're keeping Pesach much better, so to speak, than our forefathers kept Pesach. So we're innovating some new reality in the way that we keep Pesach, and that merits that we receive some new power the whole year to come. Once more, that's attributing the hitpashtus from the etzem, this new projection to ourselves, because we're keeping Pesach better than Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael was a great sage of the Mishnah, but he for sure did not keep kitniot and shruya, because according to the Gemara, both are not only they're not required, even says that you should. It's not. According to one of the Rishonim, Rabbeinu Yerucham, one of the great Rishonim, it says that kitniot is a minhag shtut. It's folly, and even the more so shruya. But we don't care. It's called shtut iktusha, holy folly. So it could be because of that holy folly that we have. So the Arizal says that if you're like that, so Hashem is also going to give you strength and protect you from now on, not to fall in temptation, not to fall in sin. The other way to understand is that this is the power of the Arizal himself. Actually, we have to put the two together. Because it's called his kashus. It has to do with connecting himself to the power of a tzaddik. The Arizal was so great. And what was his life work? To reveal a totally new vision of the inner dimension of the Torah. It's called the Kabbalah. The teachings of the Kabbalah of the Arizal are not like anything that preceded him. Something altogether new. So this is a soul that his whole life mission of this soul is to bring new. It's called Or Chadash Al Tzion Torah, new light. And the explanation of new light means that it's not revealing concealed light. It's taking essence, which is not light, taking what is essentially darkness and metamorphosizing it or transforming it into light, which is the opposite of Head and Begilui. Head and Begilui, which is concealment and revealment, means that there was concealed light, just like the treasure that we said before. It was there, it was just concealed. So light also can be concealed, but it's light. And somebody opens up that which is concealing it and becomes revealed. But Etzem Beit Pashtut is not revealing concealed light. It's creating new light. the basic parable for Etzem Bit Pashtut, the second principle, is the sun itself that radiates light. How does the sun radiate light? Now we know even better than in the way it's explained in Chassidut, that the process of fusion which is taking place within the body of the sun, and that's actually creating all the time new light, and that's what the sun radiates. Right, so once more, if we accept this, the second opinion, the second way to explain, so definitely the phenomenon is not a retroactive phenomenon. It's a phenomenon from here on, and it applies not simply to unintentional sin, it applies to intentional sin as well. It doesn't promise you that you can't use your free choice nonetheless to sin, that's not. If you're really into sinning, so the Arizal is not going to take away your free choice. But if you're on the borderline, if you're a borderline case, then the Arizal is giving you once more a shot in the arm and reinforcing the power of the soul to choose good and not to fall into the pitfall of the sin. And we said that there's actually two merits simultaneously operating. One is the merit of all of the humot, which are new humot that the Jewish people has accepted upon itself in relation to Pesach. And the other is the power of the Arizal himself. And so actually, what we said now is Yud Kei Vav Kei. According to the first opinion, that what the Arizal said is simply revealing an eternal truth, and therefore you can ask a question from a previous generation. That's the Yud of this meditation that we're now meditating. The first Hey is that it always was and it always will be. And that it's and also, excuse me, actually, always was and always will be is contained in the Yud, which is the Head and Vikirui. The first Hey is that it's only referring to unintentional sin, not to intentional sin. The Vav is the etzem of etzem v'itpashtus. It's a new projection into reality, a true innovation. And the final Hey is that it's giving you the power to overcome temptation, which means intentional sin, not just unintentional sin. Who is the archetypal case in the Torah of someone that actually falls into intentional sin? It's King David. It's Malchut. It's the actual temptation itself, and either to fall or to stand the trial is a Malchut, the last Hey of Hashem's name. Right. All of this was simply meant to be an introductory thought coming out of Pesach, and to ensure us that we'll be gesund, that we'll be healthy both in body and spirit the whole year to come, including next Pesach. The figure, most of our classes every month are on different figures from the Tanakh, from the Bible. And the figure today wanted to talk about Joshua. It's a very, very important figure in the Bible that we haven't yet addressed. Why? Because Joshua, this is his special month, the month of Nissan. There are three, or actually four, of the most important dates in the life of Joshua that all fall in in this month of Nissan. One is the great miracle of splitting the Jordan, which is compared to Moses himself splitting the Red Sea. Actually, it says that everything that Moses did, Joshua did something similar. And just like the splitting of the Red Sea was through the power of Moshe Rabbeinu, that's what we just read 2 days ago on Shisha Pesach, the last day of Pesach, the splitting of the Red Sea. So Joshua also did something similar to that. And what he did, he split the Jordan River in order for the whole Jewish people to pass over the river. The power of the splitting was the ark. The ark of Adon Kol Haaretz. Aron HaBrit Adon Kol Haaretz is the expression. The master of the whole earth. That's the way Hashem is referred to in this particular verse. The way God is referred to. When the ark of the covenant of the master of the earth touched the shore of the Jordan, the waters split. What does it mean split? It's not like the Red Sea. The Red Sea just split in two sides. But the Jordan was actually, the water is just descending from north to south. Meaning that it just stopped. So what happened to all the water that's coming from the north? It rose up higher and higher and higher. So all the water that went to the south just disappeared. So not exactly like the splitting of the Red Sea, and all the water that was descending from the north just rose up. So it's a miracle that even maybe is a little bit more intense than even the splitting of the Red Sea. And then the whole Jewish people passed over, and that took time. It took a long time. And then that was not enough. The ark was still there. The power of the ark was making this miracle happen. And at the end, before Joshua said to take the ark out on the west border, this border of the Jordan. So he said to take 12 stones from the bed of the river of the Jordan and to construct them as a monument to commemorate this tremendous miracle. And that's what happened. When did when did the Jewish people, what is his greatest act, and what is his mission? To fulfill the promise of God to Moses to bring the Jewish people into the promised land. That Moses himself did not merit to fulfill the promise. And the one that merited was his loyal and faithful disciple, Joshua, that will talk about how loyal he was to his master, more than any disciple in the world. And he fulfilled, consummated the life objective of Moses to bring the Jewish people into the promised land. When did that happen? This definitely is one of the most important dates in the Jewish calendar. When did we enter the promised land? With this tremendous miracle, that happened on the 10th of Nissan. The 10th of Nissan, before the Exodus, was Shabbat HaGadol, the date that we were commanded to take the Pesach offering, the sheep, and keep it, guard it until the 14th, to be sacrificed on the 14th. It's the initial Shabbat HaGadol. That was 40 years before. Does anybody remember what happened on that very date 1 year before? That is the date of the Istakut, the passing of Miriam, the older sister of Moshe and Aaron. Meaning that on the first yortzeit, the first day of passing of Miriam, Joshua took the people into the Promised Land, which is understood to be that she was there, her spirit, her power was there together with the ark of the covenant of the Master of the earth, to give the Jewish people her merit, to merit this tremendous miracle and the Jewish people entering the land of Israel. Meaning that we already see that there must be some relation between Joshua and Miriam. When is his own yortzeit? The yortzeit of Joshua is the 26th of Nissan, which is this Wednesday, another few days. The first holiday that the Jewish people performed after entering the Promised Land is Pesach. Because Pesach is the holiday of Joshua. After Pesach, they waited the week of Pesach, and before they kept the holiday. And only after the holiday was over did they begin the conquest of the first major city, which was called the Man'ul, the key or the lock of the land of Israel, of the Promised Land, which is conquering the city of Jericho. And it took, they began only after the holiday was over. It took 7 days. The seventh day was Shabbat, and every day they encompassed, encircled the city. On the seventh day, which was Shabbat, that's when the conquest took place. And they blew the shofar, and the walls fell also miraculously. They were swallowed up into the earth. When did that happen? That happened on Koach Nissan, the 28th of Nissan, which is this coming Friday. The day after we entered the land of Israel was another tremendous, great event that we read about in the Haftarah. That Joshua circumcised all of the males that in the desert for 40 years the males were not circumcised. So the fact that he circumcised the whole people on one day was also one of the greatest things in his life. So all of these things, including his own yortzeit, which is the day that all of his life's work comes together and rises up to its source in heaven, it all falls on this month of Nisan. There's just one other very, very important day that falls on another month. That's Shemesh B'Givon Dom. V'yareach Be'emekayadon. That's when he made the sun and the moon stand still. There are different opinions of the sages for how many hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, how long the sun and the moon stood still in order for the Jewish people to complete the battle against the kings of Canaan. And then the verse reads in the book of Joshua that there was never a day like that day, never before and never after, that God listened to the voice of a man. Meaning that according to the literal pshat, here Joshua appeared greater than Moses, his mentor. Chazal say that there was something similar, as we say everything that happened to Moses, there was something similar that transpired by Joshua. Here is the opposite direction. The Chazal say that there's also some similarity of making the heavenly celestial bodies become static, also in the time of Moses. But according to the simple reading of the verse, it's not like that. It says there was never a day before or after that God so listened to the voice of men. There's also something very interesting about that miracle. First of all, when did it happen? On what day? It happened on the third day of Tammuz, Gimel Tammuz. So everything, all of the important milestones of his life, of Joshua, on this month of Nissan, except for this one, which is a continuation. Actually, what is the third of Tammuz? It's the longest day of the year. So since it's the longest day of the year physically, it's also the kli, the vessel, to become enlarged and broadened, as we'll explain. That Joshua has to do with taking some reality and making it broader and wider. So it says that Hashem does a miracle by taking that which is most like it, similar to it in physical reality, and just extending it. That's why this particular miracle happened on the longest day of the year, and it just became extended more and more. If this month of Nisan is the month of Moses, what is the month of Joshua? What would we say is the month of Moses? Moses precedes Joshua. It's meant to. So I would say that it's the previous month, the month of Adar, because the month of Adar is both the birth date and the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. So if Moshe Rabbeinu is identified with Adar, the next month is Nisan. Adar is a preparation. The term in the sages is that the Geula, the redemption of Purim, is an introduction to the redemption of Pesach, to the Exodus. So the Exodus is through the power of Moses. But the purpose of the Exodus, the ultimate purpose of the Exodus, is to enter the Promised Land. As the verse says, why do we drink 4 cups of wine on Pesach? Because there are 4 words of Geula, of redemption. I will take them out of Egypt. I will save them from Egypt. I will redeem them from Egypt. I will take them to myself. But after these 4, there's a 5th. Some people drink a 5th cup of wine. What is the 5th? I will bring them into the Promised Land. Vehiveti. So the ultimate purpose of the Exodus is to enter the Promised Land, and that is fulfilled not by Moses. That's fulfilled. But the first 4 were fulfilled by Moses. But the 5th is fulfilled by Joshua. So we'll try to now, in short, go through some of the characteristics and properties of Joshua and what we can learn from them. The name Joshua comes from salvation. It's a permutation of the word Yeshua. In Kabbalah, salvation is a revelation of the basic 2-letter root of salvation is Shin Ayin. Shin is 300, Ayin is 70. And the term in Kabbalah is that there are 370 Shin Ayin lights that emanate and radiate from the countenance of the supernal, super intellectual crown. That's where salvation comes from. So in simple terms, salvation comes from something which is super rational. And since he is a permutation of salvation, Joshua, so it means that he has a source, an origin in the super rational, the place that salvation comes from. That's his crown property. the most amazing things about Joshua is that together with him being a warrior, a militant, several months ago we spoke about the most important sage of the Tanaim, the sages of the Mishnah, who is also, his name is Joshua. Rav Yeshua ben Hanania, we even said that this year, Tavshinayin Chet, the date of this year equals the name Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hanania. It's his year. What did we explain about him? His disciple was Rabbi Akiva. How did we explain the difference between the mentor and the disciple? That the mentor was a pacifist and the disciple was a militant. So I won't repeat that. But here we see that apparently Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania was a pacifist and didn't want the rebellion of Beitar to take place because he foresaw what will be the terrible result. His namesake, which is Joshua the first, was a militant. In the Midrash, there's even a term for Joshua that says that Joshua is Yoshua Rosh Lakofshim. He is the great conqueror, the head of all conquerors. He battled and defeated 31 kings of Canaan. It says in the Midrash that each one of the kings had a vice king, means a viceroy or a second in command, and each was a spiritual power by itself. What's very interesting is that the vice king, the vice president of each of these 31 countries within the borders of the land of Israel, the term in Chazal is called anti-Kesar. Kesar is like a Caesar, which is even more than a king. And the vice was called the anti-Kesar. Apparently he was waiting to overcome the king, become himself the king. In the event, it says that he actually had to fight 62 powers. 31 kings and the 31 anti-kings of each of the 31 countries. So that number is also very significant for Joshua, the 62. So he was a fighter. There's one place that it says that in the history of the Jewish people, there are 3 great warriors. Who are the 3 great warriors? The first is Joshua. When does Joshua first appear in the Bible, in the Torah? His name first appears when, at the end of Parashat B'Shalach, when Moses says to Joshua, "B'char lanu anashim, choose for us men, and go out and battle Amalek," which is the arch enemy of the Jewish people. And Moses did not do it himself. Some opinions criticize Moses for not taking command himself in this war. But the reason is that Moses knew that war is the mission and the function and the power of Joshua. So he spiritually helped it by raising up his hands and giving us inspiration and courage. Even to Joshua, it says that 3 times Joshua is addressed by Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and courageous. The word Chazak is 115. Moses is 3 times 115. The average value of the 3 letters of Moshe is Chazak. That's why after every Chumash we say Chazak, Chazak, we need Chazak. 3 strengths That's like a signature of Moses, but the three strengths are actually addressed to Joshua. It's projected from Moses to Joshua. Be strong and courageous. Once more, the relation between Moses and Joshua is the strongest relation in the whole Tanakh and Torah between mentor and disciple, which is a stronger relationship even than father and son. Moses thought maybe that his successor would be his son, but no, his successor is his faithful disciple, which is a much stronger kesher bond even than father and son. That's the most important thing. And the catalyzer of that connection is this word, it's explained in Kabbalah, this word chazak. Strong, 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 strong. Who are the three? Just like the three times strong. Every strong has a courageous to it. But the first word is strong. It says that there are three great warriors that actually must reflect these three strongs. The first is Joshua himself. The second is King David. The three great warriors. Who is the third? See, I guess. It says that the three great warriors of the Jewish people. Joshua, David, and it's not in the Bible. Chanukah. Yehuda Maccabi. Those are the three great warriors of the Jewish people. Joshua, the first, everything begins from the first. Joshua, David, and Judah the Maccabee. Who will be the fourth? If you have three, you have to have four. So it must be that Mashiach will be the fourth. But his war will be in a different way. Just like Reb Nachman says that he'll be a warrior, but he won't even have to shoot one bullet. He will shoot, but he'll just shoot rays of light. And in that way he'll also be the great conqueror, Rosh Lakovshim, that will conquer all of mankind through the rays, the karnei or of light that he will project into the world. So those are the four. These also four must correspond in some way to Yud Kei Vav Kei. What's tremendously significant about Joshua, that in addition to his being a warrior, he was a Torah scholar at the same time. Nowadays, you don't find those two going together. At the beginning of the book of Joshua, when he's now beginning his function as the leader of the Jewish people, and bringing the Jewish people into the land of Israel to conquer all of these 31 kings. So God says to him, that if you will not just keep, you will study and contemplate the Torah, that is what will give you the power to inherit the land, to conquer the land. And the verse reads, you shall contemplate and delve into the Torah day and night. Such a statement is not said in the Torah. There is a mitzvah to learn Torah in the 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch. But never, in no place in the Pentateuch that it says that you have to learn Torah non-stop, 24 hours a day. That very important statement, which appears in the Shulchan Aruch, is interpreted what it means, to who does it apply. But that statement of learning Torah continuously, day and night, that's a command to Joshua, not to Moses. So this pair of properties to be a warrior and to be a Torah scholar is very, very exceptional, tremendously exceptional. That corresponds to his level of wisdom. Because wisdom is oraita michokhmah nafkat. The Torah, and learning the Torah, is the service and the expression of wisdom. The sages say that the countenance, the face of Moses is like the sun, and the face of Joshua is like the moon. The two words chama levana are almost the same letters as chokhmah bina, and they equal exactly the same. And if you write in Hebrew these two words chama levana, sun, moon, and just take the lamed of levana, the first letter of levana, and transform it into two letters ki, lamed is 30, into 20 and 10, which is kaf yud, and then cut the kaf and put it into the sun, it becomes chokhmah, wisdom. And what remains is bina. You have to see that in Hebrew. In any event, the fact that he is the moon that receives from the sun, in its origin, that's his bina, that's his understanding. It says that in a certain way, a disciple, a faithful disciple, can reach deeper into the soul, into the wisdom of his mentor, in his understanding more than the mentor himself is conscious of. That property is called uvanta de liba in the terminology of Chassidut. That a disciple is able to reach a level, like the moon is able to reach some level of reflected light, which is deeper than the light that you see directly coming from the sun. Either it creates some laser effect in the light, or does something else to the light itself that it receives from the sun to perfect more than the light that it receives. And that's a property of the moon. We're called the moon in relation to Hashem, but also Joshua is called the moon in relation to Moses. And his name is Bin Nun. His father's name is Nun, which is 50, in the 50 gates of understanding. Moses did not merit the 50th gate in his lifetime. But Joshua, in his devotion to his mentor, in a certain sense merited Bin Nun as he to understand the 50th gate. Now, to commit himself to fulfill and consummate the mission of his mentor, which is called his real hitkashrut to Moshe Rabbeinu. Once more, the first time that he appears is Moses tells him, go fight Amalek. Which is also the beginning of his appearance in the Torah is doing what Moses tells him to do, which is to fight against the arch enemy of the Jewish people. I mean, that the power to fight against Amalek is your power. That is the real hitkashrut or dat of the disciple, to follow the instructions of his mentor. Especially when the instructions of the mentor demand from him mesirut nefesh, self-sacrifice. And that level, that dat, the itkashrus of this, like in the Chassidic terminology, the itkashrus, the connection of a chassid to a rebbe, it's very good that you learn, and even that you reach the 50th gate of understanding in the words of your rebbe. That's great. But even more than that is that you fulfill the instructions of your rebbe, what he tells you to do. Especially if he tells you to fight. That's the Hiskashdas Edat. Once we're going through very quickly the different properties of Joshua. If there's a phrase which appears both in reference to Moses and to Joshua, which is Moshe Ohev Yisrael v'Yoshua Ohev Yisrael. Moses was a true lover of Israel. How did that express itself? That he wasn't commanded by God to reveal all of the inner dimensions of the Torah, but because he had an ayin tovah, a good eye, and whatever he received he wanted to give. The desire to give is chesed. So because he loved Israel, he wanted to give Israel everything that he possessed, spiritually. The same phrase is used in reference to Joshua. Yoshua Ohev Yisrael. Joshua was a lover of Israel. How did that express himself? He didn't suffice when he brought the Jewish people into the land of Israel to conquer the 31 kings. He took care and he devoted himself to something that he wasn't actually explicitly instructed to do, to make sure that the infrastructure of the country is at the highest possible level. He built roads. He made sure there were marketplaces. He did many other things to ensure the physical prosperity of his people in his land. So he wasn't just a warrior. He conquered the land for his people because he loved his people. And that expressed itself after the conquering was finished, that he went on to devote himself to make the land as beautiful and as good as possible for everybody. That was his ayin tovah. So once more, Moses' good eye was to reveal all of the inner wisdom that he received from on high. And Joshua's love was providing all of the physical necessities for the Jewish people to live in the land of Israel. So we have to learn from both of them. Another thing which is common to Joshua and Moses is that both of them knew how to punish in the proper context. As it says in the Midrash, this is one of the meanings of Gvura is know how to and when to punish. Punish sounds bad to punish, but sometimes you have to punish because the Torah says that there's schar v'onish, there's reward and punishment. A true leader has to know when and how to punish. And Chazal say that both Moses, they bring different examples, and Yoshua. In the case of Yoshua, it has to do with Achan, the one that stole from the booty of Jericho, which was forbidden. And because he stole from that booty, the Jewish people lost one battle, and 36 of the greatest of the Sanhedrin were killed. And that was the only time that Joshua was defeated, and that he actually had to run away from the battle. And when they discovered who was responsible, spiritually responsible, so he was punished. He was punished by death. At the same time that he was punished by death, Achan, so Joshua said to him that just today you will be punished, but you will reach the world to come, and you will be together with us in the world to come. This Achan. It's know how to punish. It's know how to something. It's a severe medicine. A medicine you think is always to be healed, but sometimes the medicine is so severe that the medicine is to kill you. But it's in order to enliven you forever and ever, for eternal life in the world to come. So once it says that both Moses and Joshua had the power and the insight when and how to punish for the sake of true rectification of that individual and for the sake of the whole Jewish people. That's his gvura. Joshua, in addition to the fact that he was a Talmid Chacham, that he was learning day and night, more than anybody. It says nothing like that about anybody else in the Torah. Did he innovate anything in the Torah itself? He did, in addition to his chesed, that he built roads and marketplaces and all the other physical necessities. It says that in the Torah per se, he enacted 10 different takanot, enactments. All of them is for the sake of the individual, that the individual in different times is able to enjoy property that belongs to someone else in a way that it does not detract from the other person's property. There are 10 different things when you can walk through somebody's field. Many other cases, we won't go through all of the 10, but there are 10 different takanot, enactments. These are Torah laws, like new Torah laws, that all has to do with Yishuv, with settling the land of Israel. That there has to be public consciousness and there has to be private consciousness. This perfect blend of taking care of the public interest and also of the private interest of each individual, that is the Torah innovation of Joshua. But the last of the 10 is that it's called a met mitzvah. That if a person is walking along a road and sees a corpse of a Jew, so that corpse in the middle of somebody else's field, that corpse is konet mikomo, acquires his place. The place that he lies belongs to the corpse. And you bury him there in that place. You don't have to take him to a cemetery, even though the place belongs to somebody else. As an example on that one, for the 10 different things which were very practical things when the people entered the land of Israel to make sure that the public interest as well as the private interest are both held maximally. And these are Torah enactments. Torah enactments have to do with Tiferet. Tiferet is laws of the Torah. So he actually is responsible for 10 different Torah laws. His netzach v'hod are his warrior abilities. Because netzach v'hod has to do with army. The name of Netzach and Hod, the next two Sfirot, means army and war. So everything that has to do with war, we won't go more into detail because it's already late, is Netzach. What about this covenant? And who is he, Joshua? Joshua is a descendant of Joseph and Ephraim, who in Kabbalah, we know that Joseph and Ephraim are, before we talked about Eshet Potiphar, and Joseph, the temptation of the wife of Potiphar and Joseph, he rectified his brit. He's called Yesod, the Sfirah of Yesod. Joshua is also the Sfirah, the channel of protecting and rectifying the covenant, the Yesod. But brit, covenant, also refers to a covenant between the Jewish people and God. Only Joshua made, after Moses made a covenant at Sinai, and also before the people passed over the Jordan River. At the end of his life, he also made a covenant between the Jewish people and God. But Joshua, at the end of his life, took the whole Jewish people. They were already settled, everyone in this place around Israel. But all of them gathered together in Shechem and made a new covenant with God to keep the Torah. So the Torah was only kept 100% according to the law of Moses, only in the days of Moses and Joshua. That's why it said that as long as Joshua was alive, for Moses, it was as Moses was still alive. That's called Ever Chai, the live limb of the Yesod, of the Brit, of the covenant. Actually, he made a covenant when they entered the land, but the special covenant he made it was before he passed away at the end of his life. How long did he live? He lived just the same number of years as Joseph, 110 years. Moses lived 120 years, and Joseph lived 110, and also Joshua lived 110. Moses' life divided into 40, 40, 40. How did Joshua's life divide? How old was Joshua at the Exodus? He was 42. When did he become the leader of the Jewish people? 40 years later, 82. 2 years after Moses. Moses became the leader of the Jewish people at the age of 80. And Joshua became the second leader of the Jewish people at the age of 82. So how long was he the leader of the Jewish people? Moses was the leader of the Jewish people for 40 years. How long was he? For 28 years. Yechi, Koach Shanim. 28 years he was the leader of the Jewish people. Who was the leader after him? The first three leaders of the Jewish people are also considered to be like our forefathers, the patriarchs. In a certain sense, Moses is like Abraham, and Joshua is like Yitzchak, Isaac, and who's the third? Who's the third after Joshua? Who comes after? Actually, a relative of his, a close relative. His name's Othniel ben Kenaz. All of the figures that we've discussed in all of the last few years that we're discussing figures in the Bible, so even the greatest of the great, they all had flaws. That's one of the things that we discussed. Everybody had some problem, some sin, even Moses. What about Joshua? Did Joshua have any flaws? So it says that in order to look for flaws in Joshua, you have to look hard. It's not so the flaws of all the other great people are apparent, are very clear. But the flaws of Joshua are very, very hard to find. Nonetheless, Chazal do identify a few flaws. But you can't be a human being if you don't have flaws. So there must be some flaws, just have to see what they are. One flaw is that after Eldad Medad prophesied in the camp, not commanded so, that was also not good, that they prophesied something they were not told to prophesy. They received Ruach HaKodesh. What did they prophesy? That Moses can die and Joshua is going to bring the people into the land of Israel. So when Joshua heard that prophecy, he became angry at them, and he turned to Moses and he said, Adoni Moshe Klayim, put them in prison, these two guys. What are they? They're prophesying that Moses, you're going to die and I'm going to die and I'm going to lead the people into the land of Israel. So Chazal say, is that a flaw? Did he sin? Joshua, he was jealous for his mentor. And he didn't want to accept this prophecy. So I wouldn't call that a sin, I would call that a merit. But sometimes in a merit itself, there's a drop of sin. What was the sin? The hura halacha b'fnei rabo, the term in Hebrew. That he told Moses what to do. He told Moses that you should put him in prison. So it says that because he told Moses what to do, he didn't merit to have children, sons. Or I mentioned this in the... Just because of these three words. Once more, I read it as something very good that he said. What did Moses answer him? He said, Mi yiten, kol am Hashem nabiyim. Would it only be that all of the Jewish people should be prophets? And that's the way it will be. Moses knew that the prophecy, that these two had been chosen to be of the 7 elders. Just that they were so modest, they didn't enter the tent. They remained in the camp. So Moses knew that the prophecy was a true prophecy, but Joshua didn't know it. Just said that these are two guys in the camp that are saying that you're going to die and I'm going to take the people into Israel. Nonetheless, there was this little drop of law that he told his Rebbe what to do. Don't tell your Rebbe what to do. So that's one thing. Was there anything else that he did wrong? These are real little things. As we said before, all the other great figures were much more blatant things. The other little thing is that he accompanied Moses when he went up to Mount Sinai to a certain point, and he waited for him, and when Moses descended, because God already said that your people has sinned, the golden calf. But he didn't know about that. So they heard a voice. They heard the voice of the people, and they camped together. They were coming back, but Joshua had no inkling of what was going on. So he said to Moses, Kol milchama b'machaneh. I hear war, that there's war taking place in the camp of Israel. So what did Moses answer them? Moses said, it's not a voice of war. It's not a voice of victory. It's not a voice of falling. It's just a voice of leitzonos. It's kol anot. It's a voice of mockery. It's a voice of idolatry. So, is there anything wrong in what Joshua said? He said, I hear a voice of war in the camp. So Chazal say also an amazing thing. So that Moses always was preparing. Everybody has his great disciple, his choice disciple that he's preparing to take over, to be a successor. But when Moses heard him say that I hear a voice of war in the camp, he said, I can't appoint this guy to be my successor. He's not able to distinguish between voices. He doesn't know how to identify a voice. He thinks this voice is a voice of war, it's a voice of mockery, it's a voice of Avodah Zarah. A person that can't identify the voice of his people, even though it's from afar, he's not present, doesn't see what's happening, but it's his people, and he hears some voice. So there's a very deep idea that a sign of a true leader is to hear the voice of his people. So Moses at that moment he fell in spirit that how can I appoint this Joshua to be the next leader of the Jewish people? Was there anything else that he did? Any other problem in Joshua? Also a very, very little thing. A third thing. There are three things. This actually doesn't say in the Torah at all. This is just from Chazal. The third thing. It says that before Moses passed away, Moses called Joshua and he said to him, Joshua, my dear Joshua, that you're now going to take the Jewish people into the land of Israel to fulfill my mission. Now is the time that you can ask me any question that you have in the Torah, and I will answer you. Just a few moments before his passing. So what did Joshua say? He said, Moses, my mentor, you in the Torah have written that that Joshua, the servant of Moses, the attendant and assistant of Moses, is continuously in the tent of learning, and learning from you day and night. I have been learning from you day and night for the last 40 years. So all of your teaching, I have no question about your teaching. I know it all. So Chazal said that at that point also, at the very last moments of Moses, he had a little nefilat ruach. His spirit fell. Because this was an opportunity, like the last one chance, an opportunity to reveal like Elisha in reference to Eliyahu, to reveal a Pishtayim in Moshe Rabbeinu, to reveal like a new influx of the deepest things that Moses had not been able to reveal up to this point. Only in this third case of Joshua do Chazal say what the result was. The result is that on the spot, because he said this, on the spot, he forgot 300 laws. And he became questionable, meaning Safek, he became skeptical about 700 different laws. Altogether, 1,000 different laws. As soon as the Jewish people realized that Moses is now about to die, and Joshua, he's here to keep intact the whole Torah, has forgotten 1,000 things. So it says they wanted to kill him. But God took care. This is all to understand the third leader. He had his nephew, Othniel. He came and he saved the scene. Because with his pilpul, with his contemplation of the Torah, he brought back on his own all of those 1,000 things that Joshua forgot, because he said to Moses that I know it all. So here we see the tremendous connection between these three. That Othniel, at the end, the third leader to be, he saves the scene. So these three are actually just like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But this is not too much to explain right now. We'll just get to the last thing. The last thing is maybe the most important thing. We're way over time now. That his Malchut. Malchut is the fact that he's a leader. Moses, because of the fact that you can't differentiate between voices. You don't know if the voice of the people is a voice of war or if it's a voice of mockery. So you shall lead, at the very end, Moses said to Joshua, you shall lead the Jewish people together with the high priest. Came means you can't do it alone. You have to have a partner. Came God himself and says to Moses, no, that's not the way it works. There's only one leader to a generation. The one leader has to take a rod and hit everybody in his head to do what he says. You can't have two people. So that expression of one leader for a generation and not two, even though Moses himself, who is greater than Moses, thinks that you have to have two in this particular case. God has to override Moses and say that, no, you can't have two, just one. So obviously that's the word dabar means to speak. It's from the root to speak, but it means to lead, a leader of the people, the same word in Hebrew. So that's one thing, that he has to be the full-fledged 100% king, not two functions, not two people. But the deeper thing about Malchut is the power to descend into the lower world, the lower worlds, and to elevate fallen sparks. How do we see that in Joshua? His Malchut principle. That's the fact that has to do with this. What Malchut is one's wife. Who is Joshua married to? Married to Rachav Azonah. That woman, when he left, at the time of the Exodus, how old was he? We said before. He was 42 years old. At the very time of the Exodus, Rachav Azonah was a Goya living in Jericho. She was 10 years old. At that time, she was 10 years old. She began her profession, which was a prostitute. And she excelled in that profession to the extent that Chazal say there was no one like her ever in that profession for 40 years, from the age of 10 to the age of 50. So when Joshua entered the land of Israel, he was 82 and she was 50. And at the end, and she saved the spies that he had sent, and they promised her that they would not kill her and her family. And she said that I know that God is one in heavens and earth. She only left out in the vacuum. She didn't say that God is also one in the void, which is called Ein Od. But after, on the 28th, is also the date of the conquering of Jericho. It doesn't say exactly when they married, but it probably was on that very day. That together with conquering Jericho, so she was saved, and Joshua married her. Before he married her, she converted 100%. And what is a conversion? Conversion means placing Hashem, placing God in the void. That's the expression of the sages. Not just that God is one in heaven and earth, but Ein Od, which means in the void, in the vacuum. It means that there's nothing else except God. Even vacuum is God. Everything is God. That's her conversion to the Jewish people, and she married him. As we said before, he didn't have sons, but according to the sages, he did have daughters from Rachav. And from his daughters came out 8 high priests and 8 prophets, amongst which are the greatest of the prophets. Jeremiah is a descendant of Rachav. Yechezkel, Ezekiel is a descendant of Rachav. Chudah Hanaviah, one of the 7 prophetesses, is a descendant of Rachav. These are 3 out of 8. So her children are like the greatest of the great. How was Joshua called before Moshe Rabbeinu gave him the letter Yud, became Yoshua? His name was Hosea. Is there somebody else in the Tanakh whose name is Hosea? Yes, there's a prophet. The first of the 12 prophets, which is the first prophet of Israel to write his prophecy, his name is Hosea, which is the same name as Joshua. How does his prophecy begin? God says, go marry a prostitute. This is a sign, again, we can't get into this right now, but this is a sign, a symbol for the Jewish people that have gone away for other lovers from God. But God cannot let them go. Before God asked Hosea, the people has forsaken me. What should I do? God says to Hosea. Hosea says that if the people has forsaken you, choose another people. So God says, if you said that, choose another people. So I'm telling you, go marry a prostitute, and then afterwards, let's see if you will divorce her. So that prostitute, she has a name. Her name is Gomer Bat Ivlaim. He had 3 children from her, 2 sons and 1 daughter. The names were all symbolic of the exile of the northern kingdom. But then afterwards they became sweetened and changed into good. It doesn't say there that she became a Balat Tshuva, but I'm sure that if she was married to Hosea, she must have had Hirurei Tshuva, thoughts of Tshuva. So God said, cast her away. So she said, I already am doing Tshuva. Now that I'm married to her and I have children from her, I love her. I can't cast her away. Doesn't matter even if she's still a prostitute. Not like Rachav. So these 2, this is now connecting the crown to the Malchut. The crown is salvation. And the Malchut, there are two witnesses here that the Tikkun of Malchut is elevating the fallen sparks, is symbolized in the Tanakh here 2 times by these 2 people who have the same name, Yoshua and Hosea, to elevate prostitution. Prostitution is the problem of the Jewish people. What does prostitution mean? It means going after, that the whole Jewish people goes after foreign gods. But the rectification is that it has to be a tzaddik. It's not just a regular tzaddik. It has to be the greatest tzaddik of the generation, the Rebbe, the Mashiach of the generation, that marries the prostitution of the Jewish people. Or in the case of Yoshua, marries the prostitution of even of the non-Jewish world, but the non-Jewish world that is converting. Once more, she is a tzaddik, it's Rachav. We'll conclude with one gematria, one very beautiful gematria. If we unify the names, Yoshua bin Nun, Joshua the son of Nun, that's his full name, and Rachav Hazonah, Rachav the prophet, she's still, that's the way she's called, that's her name, Rachav Hazonah. If you can combine those 2 phrases together, it equals Eretz Yisrael, which is 32 times Hashem's essential name, Havaya, the land of Israel. Amongst other things, in addition to those 10 enactments that Joshua enacted, he also the second blessing of the grace after meals. The Birchat Haaretz is the enactment of Joshua. The first blessing, Hazan, is Moses wrote. But the second blessing, Joshua wrote when we entered the land. There the land is called the good and wide land, Eretz Tova Uruchava. So it says that the good land is Joshua, but the wide land is Rachav, because that's what her name means. It means Rachav is what gives breath to Israel. It says that Israel, the miracle of Israel, is a little country, a little land that has everything in it. It's called Mu'at Machzik et Amrubeh. The little that contains everything. That power of a little that is infinitely broad is the power of Rachav. The fact that it's good, that it's essentially a good land, that's the power of Joshua himself. So when you combine the 2 together, that's our land of Israel, and he was the one that brought us into the land. And his first act of conquering was to find his wife at the age of 82. Right, so this was in the merit and to commemorate Joshua. And Joshua, just say another thing, that Joshua became a very common name. Even in the Tanakh, there are many Joshuas, not many Moses or Abrahams, Yitzchak, Yaakov, there's only one. But Joshua, even in the Tanakh, Joshua and Hosea, there are many, many people that have this name. Later on, also it's a name which became very, very popular. So there's something very popular about Joshua. Meaning that in a certain way Joshua applies to Josh. Everybody is Josh. Every Jew is Josh. So now we can have now we can have a few questions if anybody wants to take the questions.
There's no question. So we'll take questions from the audience first. the women don't have questions, we're in trouble.
In a prior lecture, you mentioned moon being a Muna, Shia, the man of the moon. Now you mentioned that Yeshua is also referred to as the moon.
Right.
And he also had tactical strategies that fulfilled Moshe's wishes. And also you mentioned that he was like the Mashiach that brought the people to the way. So is he like Mashiach or
So the question is Joshua the Mashiach ben Yosef that we talk about?
So obviously Mashiach ben Joseph is the final appearance of Joshua and Yosef. But Yosef and Ephraim, his son Ephraim, and Joshua are all considered to be like one figure. So Mashiach ben Yosef definitely has to do with Joshua, but here there's also a very deep thing that is revealed, a concept of the Arizal of Kabbalah, that things, it's called the principle of relativity in Kabbalah. What does that mean, the principle of relativity? That in relation to Moses, Yoshua is like Mashiach ben David. Because the beginning of a process, of a redemption, a redemptive process, the one that begins, that is Mashiach ben Yosef. And the one that consummates the process is Mashiach ben David. So if we take Moses, the mentor, and Joshua, the disciple, as a pair, so they are two Mashiachim. What is this like? The Arizal said to his disciple, one of the greatest mentor-disciple relationships in Jewish history, is the Arizal and Reb Chaim Vital. Reb Chaim Vital wrote all of the works of the Arizal. Without Reb Chaim Vital, we wouldn't have the writings of the Arizal. Similar to another relationship, Rabbi Nachman and Reb Nosson, that Reb Nachman said that if I wouldn't have Reb Nosson, even one page of my Torah would not remain in the world. But something similar is the Arizal and Reb Chaim Vital. And even though I always think of the Arizal as much greater than Reb Chaim Vital, the mentor is greater than the disciple, nonetheless, the Arizal said explicitly that I am Mashiach ben Yosef and you are Mashiach ben David. Why? Because you fulfill me. So the one that fulfills the second generation, so to speak, that fulfills the previous, he is Mashiach ben David. So in relation to Moses, he's like Mashiach ben David, but in relation to Mashiach to come, he's Mashiach ben Yosef. Once more, that's an example of the concept in the writings of Arizal of Kabbalistic relativity.
So we have a question from the internet. Does this mean that in order to access the empowerment that the Arizal gave in his promise, that we should add the minhagim of kitniot and shruya?
If you can do it, I'm all for it. And everybody, all the great tzaddikim are all for it.
Any questions from here? Yeah, go ahead. Really loud.
To the concept of etzem v'shitanim pashtus, the Arizal, when the Arizal did the tikkun of the seder of the Shvatim in relationship to the Chodeshim, how did he affect time? Was he putting a push on the nature of the Hebrew calendar? How did that?
So the question is, the Arizal has a correspondence between the months of the year and the tribes of Israel. So that correspondence was not 100% clear before the Arizal, so did he affect time also when he made that correspondence?
Affect time. There are two basic ways to correspond the months to the tribes, either in the order of the birth of the tribes, then Reuven would be the first, and Shimon the second, or in accordance with the campsites of the Jewish people in the desert, that then Yehuda is the first. So the Arizal said that the birth order is the yet immature order, because there's always an immature state before one reaches a mature state. And the immature state of the Jewish people is the way the tribes were born. So there's also an immature time correspondence. So it depends whether you're immature or you're mature. Both are true. For instance, according to the immature level, which is called the order of the birth of the tribes, so Joseph is the 11th, and Binyamin is the 12th. So they correspond to the last month of the year. But according to the mature way that the campsites were ordered, so the 11th is Asher and the 12th is Naphtali. So again, it's not that one is true and the other is not true. It's just the chapter understood is that there are many, many cycles, like in a watch. They have many, many cycles operating simultaneously. But definitely, if the Arizal emphasized this particular cycle because it's more mature, so he wanted this to be one's more essential consciousness. So he wanted to mature us.
There was another question, actually. Somebody there.
Hi, yeah. Can you expound on the idea of Jewish leader, like elevating, like marrying a prostitute of the nations? Like, what does that actually mean, and how does that manifest?
So, if the Rav can expand on what it means that a Jewish leader would marry a prostitute of the nations.
It means he has to be so connected to the Jewish people that he loves even that element in the Jewish people that is prostitutizing itself. It means it's going after foreign worshipping foreign gods. Since just like God is married to us and he cannot discard us no matter what, he's connected to us essentially. In the same way, the Jewish leader has to be essentially connected to every Jewish soul. And that comes to the fore when the soul is like the farthest removed, and he has to marry that soul.
So we have a question from Aaron Lee Dukes from Minneapolis, and he asks, how is Joshua's conquering of Jericho on the 28th of Nissan related to the Rebbe's famous Sikha on 20th of Nissan, Tafshin and Aleph, in which he said, I've done all I can, it's up to you to do everything you can to bring Mashiach.
Okay, so this is what we actually had in mind. We didn't say it explicitly when we said that the other great day of Joshua is the 3rd of Tammuz. The 3rd of Tammuz is the day that he made the sun and the moon stand still. And then on that day it said that there was no other time in history before or after that God listened to the voice of men. So that's the day of the Yortzeit of the Rebbe. And Koach Nissan is the day that the Rebbe gave it the mission to bring Mashiach, so to speak, gave it over to us, even though he's still there, inspiring us and with us, but he said that I've done my part and now it's up to you to bring Mashiach. That's on Koach Nissan. What about his birth date? Koach Nissan, that's the day of the Brit Milah of the whole Jewish people. So that the 10th is the day that we entered the land. But the next day was the day that Joshua circumcised all of us, all of the males. Obviously that had spiritual influence on the females as well. So all of these days, I would think that the Rebbe should be identified with Moses, because he's called the Moses of the generation. But the amazing thing here is not just two, it's like the three greatest dates of the Rebbe are the 3 great dates of Joshua. So that's certainly Omer Dor Sheni, that we have to contemplate that. The Rebbe is very, very connected to Joshua, that he's born on the day of the circumcision, and he's passing us on the day of the sun standing still, What does that mean that the sun stands still? It means that in a certain sense, as we may know that in Chabad, many people feel that the sun is standing still. The sun is like the Rebbe himself. That it's not setting, it's still up there in the heavens, standing still. That's Gimel Tammuz. And the day that he hands over the mission to us, as it were, means that he's there, but he's there behind the scenes, relatively, and he wants us to use our mind and our decision-making process to l'takeset, that's what he said, l'takeset, to take counsel in yourselves and decide what is best to do in order to bring as soon as possible the redemption in Mashiach. So that has to do with the conquest of Jericho. It's blowing the shofar. The shofar is how did the walls fall? They fall by blowing a shofar on Shabbos. Everybody had a shofar in his hands. Not Joshua blew the shofar. Everybody had a shofar. And everybody, all of us were there with our shofars, and everybody was blowing the shofar. Blowing the shofar is also like the Mashiach has a shofar. So everybody was there, a little Mashiach, blowing the shofar, and the walls fell. And that's what the Rebbe wanted on Koach Nissan. He wanted everybody to take his shofar and to blow it as hard as he can. It says when you blow a shofar, the sign that you're really blowing it is that your face becomes red. If your face doesn't become red, he's not blowing the shofar properly. So with all of one's might, that's called b'chomo udecha, to blow the shofar of your personal Mashiach redemption, and when all the Jewish people together blow the shofar, then the walls will fall, and the man'ul, the lock of the redemption will be broken.
Okay, next question.
How does what you said reconcile itself with the subject Gozer of Hashem Yitzhak Mikhail?
So, how does what the Rav said about the Arizal, I take it, connected to the dictum that whatever a tzaddik declares, God performs?
Okay, so that's exactly what we were trying to say. That it's the fact that we ourselves are a machmir. Actually, there's a tshuva, a response of the first Rebbe of Chabad, of the Alter Rebbe, about shruya, about not letting matzah become wet. And there, in that response itself, he quotes the Arizal, and he adds something. The Arizal doesn't say explicitly that I make this promise that you won't sin if you keep all the chumras. But the Alter Rebbe, in his response, it does say that explicitly. He says that what the Arizal meant, he meant that this promise is in merit of all of the chumrot that people keep. That's from the response. So it's very essential for what we said, because these chumrot are later chumrot. They were not in the time of the Mishnah and afterwards. But we said there are two things: that the merit of the chumrot and the power of the tzaddik to be tzaddik gozer v'HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekayem. The tzaddik decrees and Hashem fulfills it. And here the decree was that you will not sin this year. You and me and all of us.
Okay, one more question from the audience. Somebody here?
So about the inyan of the sun that stand stood still, from a physical point of view, if I want to analyze it, I can think that the earth stopped spinning. Could be an explanation. So, and this could be explained maybe with an interaction of another core, physical core. As far as we know that Hashem is using nature to manifest himself in this reality, could be another core that is influencing the reality and the spinning of the earth. I'd like to know what you think about this, and if there is a connection, maybe not, I don't know, just keep in my mind this inyan with the Kochav Argaman that is spoken in the Zohar HaKadosh in the Parashat Shemot.
So the question is whether the sun not setting was, if it might have been achieved by the earth not spinning, and this might have been caused by another mass movement, when you said core, you meant mass?
Another mass, yes.
Another mass?
In the
and whether that might be some planet described as Argaman in the Zohar.
But if there's another mass, I wouldn't say that it's some star. I would say that it's the mass of Joshua himself. Or this Joshua must have had such great mass that he can stop the earth from spinning. And the way that Chazal explain is that he stopped the sun from moving in its orbit and the moon because he assumed the function of the sun and the moon. What is the function? It says that motion, all motion that takes place in nature is song, is music. So the sun in its motion around the earth and the moon in its motion around the earth is actually singing a song. So what was the power, the insight of Joshua? It says that Joshua was able to sing the song of the sun in place of the sun. I'm going to sing your song here, standing here on earth, and if I take over your song, so you can't move, because your motion, it says, Kol Balei Ashir Yosim Hashem Nimshachim Bashir, that's the phrase, that all motion is music, is song. And I'm going to sing in place of you. So, just like we can, if we try to understand this, that his singing, that he is able to sing the song of the sun, and thereby the sun stops moving. In the same way, he's standing on earth. We mentioned before that there's a very unique phrase. We said it several times in relation to the ark. When the Jordan River split, it says the ark of Adon Kol Haaretz, a phrase that does not appear in the Torah, that God is referred to as the master of the earth. The ark of the covenant of the master of this, there must be something about Joshua that he brings us into the earth, he brings us into the land. He also has this power. If that ark of the master of the earth is able to split the Jordan, it must be able also to make the earth stop revolving around its axis. So I mean, there's something about Joshua that he can assume the powers of nature, of the motions of nature, whether it's the sun moving in its orbit or whether it's the earth revolving around its axis. And I'm here, I'm doing it now. So if I'm doing it, you can stop. You actually must stop, because I'm not doing it in place of you. That's the way it's explained.
Okay, so we'll end now. When is the next date? Does anybody know? The next first Sunday in May. May 6th. Sunday, May 6th will be the next class. Thank you for joining us.
What's the Hebrew date?
It's Rosh Chodesh Iyar. 21st of Iyar. So thank you for joining us both on the internet and everybody who was here. And may we all be blessed with a healthy summer and refrain from any sins, intentional or not.